Chapter 1. The Fog of Mordheim. The fog never lifted from Mordheim. It curled through broken archways and shattered rooftops like the breath of a dying god, a thick and cloying miasma that reeked of rot, despair, and something far worse, something unnatural. It clung to armor and skin like damp fingers, whispering promises into the ears of those foolish or desperate enough to tread within the ruined city's bounds. The city had not healed since the comet struck. Mordheim was a carcass gnawed by time and madness. Buildings slouched like drunks against cracked streets, their gables broken and teeth like rooftops jagged. Statues of Sigmar wept stone tears, their faces disfigured by time or defiled by chaos worshippers. Once proud spires now clawed skyward like broken fingers, their stained glass long shattered into razor-edged memories. Rats the size of hounds scurried across blood-slicked cobblestones. The shadows moved even when no one cast them. Through this cursed urban crypt marched the Howlers, a Reiklander warband drawn not by valor or duty, but by the glimmer of Wyrdstone and the riches it promised. There were 10 of them, armored in patched plate and chain, faces drawn, eyes sharp with hunger. At the head strode brother Captain Wyrd Draeven, his face a grim mosaic of old scars and new regrets. He bore a heavy hammer blessed in the cathedral of Altdorf, now dulled and pitted from many foul battles. His armor, once emblazoned with the twin-tailed comet, was scuffed and blackened by the soot of Mordheim's ever-burning pyres. Beside him walked Elsbeth Marrow, clad in a black duster stitched with silver purifying runes. Her sharp eyes darted through the fog like a hawk's, her lips moving silently in prayer, or perhaps curse. A witch-hunter acolyte, Elsbeth trusted none of the men she traveled with, least of all the noble, turned mercenary who led them. They moved like wolves, weapons drawn, eyes scanning every alley, every ruined chapel, every splintered doorway. Behind them followed brutes and blades for hire. Hauger the butcher, an ogre-sized brute with a flanged mace and a child's toy hanging from his belt. Niklas and Jörund, twin marksmen who finished each other's sentences and others' lives with equal efficiency. And 5 more whose names would not matter for long. Mordheim would consume them. The deeper they went, the thicker the fog became. It wasn't natural. There was no breeze, no birdsong, only the soft, echoing drip of unseen water, and the muffled sobbing that came from nowhere and everywhere all at once. The streets narrowed into claustrophobic alleyways strewn with corpses, some fresh, some long decayed. One leaned against a wall, mouth frozen in a scream, arms hacked off at the shoulder. Another had been crucified upside down, her entrails coiled like garlands around her. None of the Howlers flinched. Horror was routine here. And then the whispers began. It started with Hauger, who halted mid-step, head tilting like a dog hearing a sound just beyond human perception. "You hear that?" he muttered. Sniffed the air. Hear what? Voices, down there. He pointed toward a street that curved into a yawning alley lined with crumbled mausoleums. "They know my name." Rorik's voice was a low growl. "Ignore it. Wyrdstone fog plays tricks." But they heard it too. Faint, feminine, seductive. Some heard loved ones long dead. Others heard laughter from childhood. Elsbeth gripped her pistol tighter. She heard the voice of her mentor, the man she watched burn on a witch pyre for a crime he didn't commit. Drawn like moths to a pyre, they moved deeper, through narrow catacombs choked with rubble and wet moss. The air grew colder. Walls were slick with blood, old or new, no one could tell. Beneath their boots, bones crunched softly. "Stop," Elsbeth hissed. The warband halted at the mouth of a vault-like archway sunken into the street. Green light flickered from within, pulsing like a dying heartbeat. On the stone lintel above it, a warning had been etched in Reichspiel, now barely legible under grime. "Do not speak with the stone." Before Rorick could issue an order, the ground trembled. From the shadows ahead, something stirred. A figure, no, a thing, emerged. Human once, perhaps. Its flesh sagged like wax near flame. A crown of jagged wyrdstone shards jutted from its skull. Its eyes glowed a sickly green. Its mouth opened and a dozen voices poured out at once, pleading, mocking, whispering. The Howlers opened fire. Pistols thundered. Crossbows snapped. One of the twins, Niklas, fired straight into the creature's chest. The bolt vanished into warped flesh, and the thing only laughed, a sound like bones breaking underwater. Then it moved. It surged forward, too fast for something its size. Haugr raised his mace, but the thing struck with a clawed hand, shearing through the brute's torso like paper. Blood sprayed across the walls in a hot, steaming arc. Joran screamed as his brother was seized, lifted, and thrown into a wall, with such force his bones exploded from his back. Elsbeth fired her pistol point-blank into the thing's jaw. The shot shattered its face, but behind the bone there was no blood, only glowing stone. Rorick charged, hammer raised high, lips mouthing a battle prayer. With a bellow of rage he brought it down. The wyrdstone creature shrieked, staggered, and retreated, dissolving into mist and fog, its form unraveling like wet parchment. Silence. All that remained was a faint trail of green sparks drifting into the darkness. The Howlers stood in stunned silence. 2 men dead, 1 maimed. And beneath the ringing in their ears, beneath the scent of blood and black powder, the whispers returned. This time they spoke only one name. Vhalrick, and the stone glowed. Chapter 2. The Mirror Vault. The path through Mordheim was rarely linear. Roads bent where they shouldn't, buildings shifted in the dark, and time itself felt warped. Mornings bled into midnight in a breath. But even amidst the shifting madness, some things did not change. Pain, hunger, and the call of wyrdstone. After the attack, the Howlers moved with tension thick as chainmail. Haugr's bisected corpse had been left behind, too heavy to carry and too broken to bury. Joran hadn't spoken since his twin's death. His crossbow trembled in his hands, his face a silent mask of grief and fury. Blood still wet on their gear, they pushed deeper, past a collapsed market district where stalls hung with rotting wares swayed gently in windless air. Statues of Sigmar stared down at them with cracked, weeping eyes, and skeletal children hung from lampposts by their entrails like crude decorations. They followed the green light. The strange pulsing they'd first seen near the creature's retreat flickered intermittently now, beckoning them through fractured streets and subterranean channels flooded ankle-deep with stagnant black water. The air stank of mildew, iron, and a strange sweetness that clung to the tongue like spoiled wine. It was Elsbeth who noticed the change first. "Stop!" she hissed again. Her eyes narrowed, pistol cocked. The alley ahead terminated at a curved wall of ancient obsidian, half buried under rubble and filth. Unlike the rest of Mordheim, it bore no signs of ruin. No moss, no grime, no decay. It was pristine. Wrong. Niklas approached first, dragging his boot through the muck to clear the base of the wall. Beneath the detritus, glyphs began to glow, deep red runes etched in some ancient high tongue warped by chaos. They pulsed in sequence like a heartbeat, left to right, top to bottom. The stone began to hum, and then they saw their reflections. It wasn't just a wall, it was a vault, a towering set of double doors, polished to a mirrored sheen. In its surface, each of the Howlers saw themselves, but twisted. Oryx's reflection grinned back with blackened teeth and hollow sockets. Elsbert's mirror self wept tears of blood, her hands covered in children's skulls. Joran's twin stood beside him again, but in the reflection his brother's throat gaped open, a serpent of wyrdstone writhing from the wound like a tongue. One by one they looked away. "What is this place?" muttered Joran, voice hollow. Elsbeth traced a sigil on the mirror. "It's warded. Old magic, but corrupted." The glyphs pulsed faster now. The air thickened, electric, like the moment before a lightning strike. Then a voice, cold, silken, and ancient, coiled into their minds. "Do not fear the truth of your reflection." They froze. No lips had moved, no sound had echoed, yet each of them heard it, clear and intimate, like a whisper spoken directly behind the ear. "You seek power, don't you? You've come this far, left behind your gods, your brothers, your oaths." Vhalrick raised his hammer. "Who speaks?" "I am one who knows your hearts. I have seen your sins. I have shared your ambitions." Elsbeth stumbled back from the mirror, pistol shaking. "It's in our minds. It's inside." "No. I am trapped, imprisoned behind this veil, bound by treachery and fear. Free me, and I shall give you more than you ever dared dream." The runes around the frame fled crimson. A circle of bone and iron etched itself into the floor beneath them. The stone shook. The mirrored doors pulsed, warping, as if breathing. Then they saw it, within the reflection, a figure beyond the glass. A man. No, something that had once been a man, clad in ruined noble finery stitched with wyrdstone thread, his face partially concealed by a half-mask of silver. Where skin remained, it glowed with green veins, cracked and oozing. Wyrdstone shards jutted from his shoulders like a crown. His eyes were endless pits of hunger and cunning. "I am Lord Vhalrick Draeven," the voice echoed in unison with the reflection's movements. "Last heir of House Draeven, master of the arcane pathways, seeker of the shard." "The liar," Elsbeth spat. "You're a damned mutant, tainted by the stone." "Tainted? No. Chosen. The stone reveals truth. I sought its wisdom. They called me mad, so they sealed me here, behind glass and runes, to rot." The mirrored vault shuddered as the voice rose in anger, the runes bleeding light like open wounds. "But you can free me. Break the sigils, sever the wards. The power you seek, gold, magic, revenge, it is yours for the taking." Joran stepped forward, eyes glazed. "You could bring my brother back." Elsbeth grabbed his arm. "No, that thing speaks poison." Vhalrick turned slowly. "What does he mean, the shard?" The vault glowed brighter now, and Vhalrick's face twisted into a hideous smile. "The shard of fate. A piece of the comet itself, not just wyrdstone, sentient. It knows paths not yet taken, power beyond time. With it, the world can be rewritten." "Why didn't you take it?" Vhalrick growled. "Because the cowards who walked with me sealed the path. They feared it. But I am not dead. I am not beaten. Only waiting for you." Elsbeth raised her pistol. "Enough lies." She fired. The shot cracked like thunder. The mirrored vault rippled as though struck by a stone, but did not shatter. Instead, blood began to run down the reflection's surface, not from the glass, but from her own mirrored self. In the vault's face, Elsbeth stared in horror as her double bled from eyes and mouth, laughing silently as the pool gathered at its feet. The Howlers backed away as the whispering grew louder. Dozens of voices now, hundreds, chanting, wailing, moaning with ecstasy and agony all at once. The vault pulsed one final time, and then the runes dimmed, sealing once more into dull stone. The whispers stopped. Silence. Vhalrick turned, grim-faced. "We make camp here. No one touches that vault." "But," Churn started. "No one." They lit no fire. They slept with weapons drawn, but none truly slept, for even with closed eyes, the mirror waited. And in the darkness beyond it, Lord Vhalrick smiled. Chapter 3. Lord of Dust and Bone. The darkness inside the mirror vault was not simple absence of light. It was alive. It pressed against the skin like wet velvet, suffocating and intimate, a presence that pulsed with quiet laughter and unseen breath. The Howlers remained in the vault's antechamber for 2 sleepless nights. Though none of them said it aloud, they all felt it, the pull, that terrible magnetic tug from the mirror, like a noose of invisible thread tied tight around their souls. Their dreams, what little rest they could snatch, were filled with warped reflections, flickering visions of gold spilling from cracked skulls and wyrdstone shards growing like tumors from their own flesh. Elsbeth no longer prayed. Vhalrick no longer spoke. Yoren now stood watch beside the mirror at all hours, his eyes sunken, bloodshot, lips mouthing the name of his dead twin like a rosary. It was on the 3rd day that Vhalrick began to speak again, not in whispers this time, but in voice, clear and ancient, like wind howling through a crypt. The mirror rippled, slowly, like oil thick with blood, and then the reflection of the vault twisted, not showing the room they stood in, but a different space. A grand hall, dust-choked and derelict, but unmistakably regal in its ruin. Massive stone pillars wrapped in hanging moss, chandeliers made of wrought bone, and at the hall's heart a throne. Upon it Lord Wyrd Draeven sat like a corpse king waiting for judgment. His form was more complete now, more real, though no less horrific. His noble regalia was faded, ripped, scorched by magical flame. One half of his body still bore the trappings of a man, pale, regal features, hair once golden, now dulled by dust and age. But the other half was chaos. Bone extruded like armor across his shoulder and ribcage. Wyrdstone shards pierced through his spine and clavicle, their jagged green edges pulsing with sick life. One eye was a void, a swirling emerald vortex, and his fingers ended in long obsidian claws. He spoke not with breath, but with thought, and his voice echoed in each of their skulls, like worms burrowing behind their eyes. "I am Vhalrick Draeven, of House Draeven, once beloved of Altdorf, scholar of the arcane, heir to the Draeven crypt fief. I walked willingly into this cursed city, not for glory, but for understanding, for truth." The mirror shimmered again, now showing a flickering series of images, glimpses into the past. A procession of bright-armored men entering Mordheim, led by a younger, uncorrupted Vhalrick, a smile of purpose carved into his face. A half-dozen warbands slaughtered in ambushes. Experiments with wyrdstone, men screaming as their bodies warped and twisted, some bursting into flame, others birthing creatures from their own entrails. A moment of triumph, Vhalrick holding a massive shard of wyrdstone, its surface black, not green, veins pulsing like a heart, his eyes wide with manic ecstasy. Then betrayal, his men turning on him. A ritual gone wrong. Chains of gold and bone, spells branded into his flesh, a mirror raised like a gate. They feared what I had found. They thought me tainted, but I was blessed. The shard revealed truths no priest would dare whisper, no wizard would admit, and so they caged me here. between reflections, a prison of glass and sigils, beyond death, beyond time. Rorik's jaw clenched. You corrupted them. They were weak. I offered power and they trembled. I offered unity and they scattered like rats. What I built, they shattered. And now I remain, Lord of dust and bone, forgotten by time, until you came. His emerald eye flared. You are not like them. You have already killed, already bled, already changed. He was right. Jurund had grown quiet as stone, the fingers of his left hand twitching at odd intervals, as if pulled by invisible strings. Elspeth's silver inquisition ring had blackened. Rorik's shadow no longer moved with him. You seek wyrdstone. You seek power. I know where the great caches lie, the ones hidden even from the demon-bound and the rat-folk. You have freed part of the seal. The rest can be undone, if you accept the price. No more deaths, Rorik snarled. Vhalrick laughed. A dry, ancient sound. There is always death, but now it can be others. Another flicker from the mirror. Now a map, half burned, etched in blood and black ink. Paths through the catacombs of Mordheim, X's marking caches. And at the center, a location pulsing with weird light. A cache untouched since the comet fell, vaulted beneath the temple of the severed tongue, sealed in blackstone, guarded by silence. Niklas, one of the few remaining mercenaries, spoke up. How do we know this isn't a trap? Vhalrick's smile widened, splitting the corner of his lip. Bone gleamed beneath. You don't. But you're still here. The vault began to hum. Slowly, loudly. Dust rained from the ceiling. The mirrored doors creaked slightly. Elspeth turned to Rorik. He'll never lead us to anything but damnation. Rorik looked at the mirror, looked at the glimmering map, looked at his men, broken, lost, and lured by the scent of salvation, wrapped in rot. And still he spoke. Show us the way. Vhalrick bowed. A monarch of filth and ruin. So begins the return, one shard at a time. The mirror pulsed. The vault door did not open, yet, but it had cracked, just slightly, and the darkness behind it breathed in anticipation. From deep within Mordheim, something ancient stirred, something buried, something hungry. Chapter 4. Echoes of Betrayal. The wind howled through the shattered bones of Mordheim like a dirge from the gods themselves, but in the vault's antechamber silence had begun to settle. Not peace, never peace, but the kind of silence that comes when every soul present begins to suspect that damnation has already begun, and they are simply waiting to meet its fate. In the darkness of their makeshift camp, with only the mirror's occasional pulsing glow to mark the passage of time, something changed. The air thickened, the veil between past and present thinned, and in that thinning, Lord Vhalrick Draeven remembered. Not in words this time, not in whispers, but in visions. The mirror shimmered again, unbidden, its surface bleeding silver and shadow. It no longer reflected the chamber. Instead it became a window. No, a wound. Into the past. The Draeven expedition. 20 years earlier. Vhalrick stood tall in polished armor chased with gold filigree, a nobleman scholar of proud Altadorf lineage. The sigil of House Draeven gleamed on his cloak, a lion split down the middle, half regal flesh, half skull, a banner of symbolism he would come to wear far too literally. Around him stood a dozen loyal men and women, sellswords, alchemists, mercenary priests of Sigmar, even a grey wizard sworn to secrecy. Their faces were hard, weather-worn, but respectful, some admiring, some wary. All were drawn to the same promise: glory, treasure, and knowledge, from the ruins of Mordheim. The comet had fallen just months before. The city still burned in places. Wyrdstone shards littered the streets like shattered emerald glass. The mad and the mutated ran wild, but to Vhalrick it was not a cursed ruin. It was a crucible. He gave rousing speeches, tales of bringing structure to chaos, unlocking the secrets of divinity, finding a higher state of being through the shards of the end times. At first they believed him. The mirror flickered again. The second vision came with blood. The laboratory beneath the bell tower. A stone chamber dripping with moisture and lined with books made of human skin. Vhalrick hunched over a slab. Upon it lay one of his own expedition, Helver, a grizzled warrior maiden who had once saved his life. Now her chest had been flayed open, her ribs cracked apart like a blooming flower. Her heart pulsed faintly, kept alive through a lattice of wyrdstone needles threading through her veins. Her mouth was sewn shut. Her eyes darted back and forth in panic clarity. She could still feel everything. Vhalrick spoke soothingly as he adjusted the flow of energy from the nearby wyrdstone shard, twice the size of a man's head, set in a brass apparatus engraved with warp runes. "I was wrong to believe the stone only corrupted," he murmured, his voice calm, gentle. "It reveals. It unmakes the falsehood of flesh and shows us the truth of what lies beneath. It wants to be part of us, and I will show it how." Helvar began to seize. Her body arched, bones cracking. Blood geysered from her eyes and ears. Her flesh bulged. Screamed. Tore. Vhalrick stepped back, triumphant. Then she exploded, not from flame or pressure, but from within. Her body unraveled in a lattice of living veins that whipped through the chamber like serpents. One man, an acolyte, screamed as a weird fused artery wrapped around his throat and crushed it in seconds. Vhalrick didn't look away. He only smiled and whispered, "Progress." The visions came faster now. The betrayal. Late at night, in a ruined chapel to Sigmar, the remnants of Vhalrick's expedition gathered in secret. Their numbers had dwindled from 13 to 5. The rest were either dead, mutated beyond recognition, or consumed in his experiments. The Grey Wizard, his once proud beard now patchy and burned, laid out the plan in hushed tones. "We bind him with rune iron and mirrored ceilings. We trap his essence beyond the veil. He is no longer Vhalrick. He is a vessel of the stone." The priestess of Sigmar hesitated. "He's still our commander, our friend." "No," the wizard whispered. "He was our friend. Now he is something else." They struck at dawn. The binding. Chains of gold and steel woven with wards. Blinding white runes carved into the stone. Vhalrick stood at the heart of a ritual circle, his arms outstretched, smiling even as the wards carved themselves into his skin like molten brands. "Do you think this is the end?" he asked as they chanted. "This is only the shedding of skin. You think you trap me, but you release me." The ritual surged. The mirror rose. He screamed, but not in pain, in joy. His body melted like wax, his essence drawn, screaming into the vault. His flesh cracked apart, revealing bone. Then the bone cracked, revealing light. And then, only silence. The mirror's glow dimmed. The vision faded. But in its place, it left impressions, memories, seared into the Howlers' minds like acid. Durant wept quietly. Niklas clutched his head, muttering, "He is still there, Behind the glass!" Rorick turned away, jaw clenched, fists white-knuckled. And Elsbeth felt it. The rot. It began as a tingle in her fingertips, an itch in her bones. Her silver ring, the witch sigil, was now blackened entirely. Her breath fogged the air even though it was not cold. Her dreams no longer felt like her own. She watched her reflection in the mirror now with cautious dread. In it, her face looked wrong, too sharp, too angular. Her eyes had gone a little too dark, her smile a little too wide. She pressed her hand to the vault wall. It felt warm beneath her fingers. Not stone, not glass. Skin. She ripped her hand back. The mirror pulsed once more. This time, no voice came. But in her bones, she knew. Vhalrick was still watching. And so was something else. Something deeper. Something older than any noble, any warband, any city. The Wyrdstone did not just corrupt, it remembered. And now it was awakening. Chapter 5. The Pact in Shadow. They stood in a circle of dust and broken sanity, the mirror vault before them pulsing faintly like a wounded eye. There was no more denying it. Whatever line they had once pretended to toe between survival and sacrilege had long since been crossed. The Howlers were no longer just scavengers in a corpse city. They were the surgeons of something far fouler. It was Niklas who first spoke aloud what they had all begun to think. "We need him." He said it softly, but it carried with the weight of inevitability. Jorund nodded, his eyes glassy, one pupil larger than the other. "He knows where the cache is, the real one. He showed us the map." Rorick said nothing. He stared at the mirror, jaw clenched, knuckles white as bone on the haft of his hammer. He was no fool. He knew what was coming. He had known since the first whisper. But command was no longer about purity. It was about control. And his grip on it was slipping, like blood through gauntleted fingers. Elsbeth stood apart, her pistol lowered but ready. She hadn't slept in days. The skin beneath her eyes had darkened into bruised hollows, and her fingernails bore faint traces of green, like she'd been clawing at wyrdstone in her sleep. Her thoughts came in echoes now, disjointed, chaotic. Still, she did not stop them. The decision, though never spoken, was unanimous in its silence. They would break the seals. The ritual circle carved into the stone floor had long faded, but its grooves remained, deep and jagged, as if clawed into place by the desperate hands of dying men. The Howlers traced them again with chalk, ash, and powdered bone gathered from the cathedral's crypts. Elsbeth lit the last of the black candles. Rorick placed a relic of Sigmar, a rusted medallion, into the circle's center. Niklas whispered the names of the dead in a language he did not understand. And Jorund, kneeling before the mirror, slid his palm and let blood drip onto the seal's edge. The mirror responded. The runes flared, first red, then green, then black. The vault shook with the moan of shifting stone, and the air thickened into syrup. One by one, the reflected faces in the mirror vanished. No more warped images of themselves. Only him, Vhalrick. His form rippled in the glass, taller now, more distinct. His voice came not as a whisper, but as a thrum, a chord struck inside the mind. The pact is made. The mirror split. No sound. No shattering. Just a seamless unfolding, like flesh peeling open. Behind it, darkness churned, deep and swirling like ink in water. From that abyss he emerged. Vhalrick Draeven, once noble, now something entirely other. His body was semi-portico, a spectral silhouette of sinew and bone wrapped in tattered robes and glimmering shards of wyrdstone. His feet did not touch the ground. He floated an inch above it, trailing shadow like a bridal train. His face was half mask, half skull, one eye socket empty, the other burning with green fire. His mouth did not move when he spoke, but his voice was everywhere. Feeling I am returned. The room darkened, though the candles still burned. Elsbeth staggered as nausea clawed through her stomach. The air smelled like old meat and roses. Rorick stepped forward, weapon lowered but not sheathed. "You said you would lead us to the cache." Vhalrick inclined his head, a gesture once noble, now grotesque. "And so I shall." He reached out a hand, not fully solid, not fully ghost, a claw of shimmering bone and vapor. He placed it gently on Rorick's chest. The captain convulsed, just for a moment, then gasped and stepped back. His eyes glowed faintly green. "Captain," Elsbeth whispered. Rorick turned, smiled. It was faint, not entirely sane. "I'm fine. He's not lying." Vhalrick's gaze swept over them. "You have taken the first step. The pact is not just signed, it is sealed in flesh. You carry the mark now, each of you." They looked to one another. Niklas' fingers twitched constantly. Yaren's skin had taken a pallid sheen, and beneath his armor, something moved across his chest. An unnatural pulse, as though his heart had migrated elsewhere. Elsbeth felt it in her teeth, the grinding, buzzing presence of something pressing against her will. Her thoughts were no longer entirely her own. She heard hymns in reverse. Vhalrick's form flickered, his legs now formed entirely of tendrils of smoke and bone. The Temple of the Severed Tongue lies northeast, beneath the Drowned district. There we will find the cache. Elsbeth swallowed. "And what's guarding it?" Silence. The word rang with weight. Not emptiness, not quiet. Silence, as if even the dead dared not speak of what slept there. Vhalrick turned. The vault behind him collapsed into shadow, swallowed by the breach. Where it had once stood, only dust and ash remained. "Come," he said. "Let me show you what your ancestors feared to know." And the Howlers followed. Behind them, the corruption took root, the shadows lengthened, the dust shifted, and the walls of the vault began to bleed. No one noticed the first body change. One of the lesser mercenaries, Dorn, fell behind, clutching his gut. When he pulled his glove away, a third eye blinked from the center of his palm. He screamed, but no sound came. Only silence. Chapter 6. The Shard of Lies. The streets of Mordheim were never quiet. Even when no footsteps echoed, when no screams pierced the air, there was always a low hum, barely audible, a heartbeat beneath the cobblestones. The city breathed, and the breath was fetid with the stink of centuries of corruption. It whispered secrets in dead tongues, murmured oaths long broken, and laughed softly at the hopes of the living. Through this miasma the Howlers marched, not as warriors but as specters, shadows of the men and women they once were. Each carried the stain of the pact now, whether etched on their flesh or buried deep within their bones. They followed a ghost who called himself noble. Through ruins that had forgotten the taste of sun, Vhalrick led them without walking. His form drifted ahead, half substance, half thought. He left no footprints, but the walls darkened where he passed. The rats fled before him, the ground curdled beneath him, and in his wake flowers bloomed, vile, black blossoms with open mouths instead of petals. They came to a rot-slick courtyard overgrown with boneweed. A collapsed statue of Sigmar lay on its side, face cracked, arms broken. On its shattered chest, Vhalrick stopped. He raised a hand and the air split. not like cloth, not like parchment, like skin. A deep, wet tear that revealed not stone but something beneath, a void that reeked of copper and burning parchment. From this wound in reality, he drew a scroll bound in sinew. "This," he said, his voice now rougher, deeper, "is your salvation. Or your ruin. Perhaps both." He unrolled it. The map was not parchment. It was tanned flesh, its edges marked by faded runes. A single path wound through it, etched in lines of dried blood. Symbols writ in ancient dialects flickered across it, like insect legs crawling across a page. At the center was a mark, pulsing faintly, a wyrdstone shard, unlike any other. "The shard of lies," Vhalrick intoned. "Not just a fragment. A will. A living piece of the comet. It doesn't grant power, it makes promises. To wield it is to have every voice you've ever feared and loved whispering your name." Elsbeth's stomach turned as she stared at the thing. Her skin itched beneath her coat and the silver on her pistol hissed faintly. She could smell burning hair. Niklas approached, entranced. "How far?" "Close," said Vhalrick. "But buried. The path winds beneath the temple of the severed tongue, through the silence." Joram muttered to himself, knuckles white on his axe. "We can take it. We're strong enough." Rorik's eyes had not left the scroll. "You knew where it was? All along." Vhalrick turned slowly, that one green ember eye locking onto him. "Of course. But you were not ready. You needed to see, to suffer." "Hide with what, help us?" Rorrik asked, stepping closer. "What do you gain?" "Release." "Lie." "That's a lie. All truth begins as a lie, the stone taught me that. Even Sigmar lied, to himself, to the Empire. I do not lie. I reveal." Elsbeth stepped between them. Her hand hovered over her pistol. "Enough." Rorrik turned. "No. I've listened. I've watched. He's using us." Her voice was strained, cracking with something not quite anger, not quite fear. "I saw what he did to the others. In the mirror, he dismembered his own men, turned them into things." Vhalrick's smile didn't move his lips, but it was there, in their minds, crawling like a spider behind their eyes. And they became beautiful. Elsbeth drew her pistol and leveled it at his chest. "Deal with it." "Tell me," she said, "what happens when we find this shard?" Vhalrick didn't answer, not with words. Instead, the world changed. The air thickened, time slowed, the courtyard melted away like wax. In its place, a vision, the Howlers, broken, kneeling, shards embedded in their flesh like thorns. Their eyes glowed. Their mouths murmured songs in languages that hadn't been spoken in 1,000 years. Elsbeth herself, crowned in wyrdstone, her pistol fused to her hand like bone grown wrong. She floated above the ruined city, her screams a melody of pain and rapture. At the center stood Vhalrick, fully formed, regal, reborn, a king of rot and revelation. The vision snapped away. Elspeth fell to one knee, retching. Her skin sizzled, blistering beneath her coat. Rorrik caught her as she collapsed. "What did you do?" "I showed her the truth. No more visions, no more lies," Rorrik said, rising slowly. He looked around. The Howlers were trembling. Niklas bled from his nose. Jorund was whispering to someone who wasn't there. Dorn was gone, again. They were fraying. Rorrik turned back to Vhalrick. "You'll take us to the shard. then you're done. That's not how pacts work. I don't care. There was silence. Then Vhalrick nodded. So, be it. Follow the blood. Step where silence walks. And if you still remember your name when we reach the end, then perhaps you'll deserve the gift. He faded once more, drifting into shadow. The map fell to the ground like a dead thing. Rorick picked it up. It pulsed. Somewhere beneath the streets, something laughed, a low, wet chuckle that echoed in the marrow of their bones. And the Howlers, bound now by fate, madness, and blood, marched toward the temple of the severed tongue, toward the shard of lies. Chapter 7. The Eye of Morslieb. The sky above Mordheim split like an overripe carcass. Where once there was gray, now there was green, vile, luminous, unnatural green that poured down from the heavens in streaks like molten emeralds. Morslieb, the chaos moon, had swollen to fill half the sky. It leered down on the cursed city like a god's diseased eye, wide and wild and full of promise. The Howlers knew what was coming. They had seen it before, the Wyrdstone storms. It began with a low hum, too low for the ears but felt in the teeth. The stone beneath their boots began to twitch. Hair stood on end. Shadows lengthened without light. Then came the scream. From the ruins around them, alleys, broken chapels, collapsed sewers, mutants spilled forth like maggots from a dead wound. Twisted, screaming things. Some with faces melted into their chests. Others dragged their entrails behind them like wedding veils. One man had 2 sets of arms, all fused at the elbow, wielding rusted sabers in spider-like arcs. Another was little more than a crawling mouth, gibbering filth and prophecy in equal measure. Behind them came the warbands, the Red Maw, a gang of Mordheim deserters turned cannibal cult. Their leader, Karsk the Flayed, wore a cuirass of stitched scalps and wielded a butcher's hook longer than a man's leg. The Blade Eaters of Ostermark, clad in iron masks, their blades coated in poison so potent it smoked on air. And the worst, a pack of Sisters of Sigmar, twisted, fallen from grace, now howling blasphemies as they charged with spiked hammers and tongues torn out, the stumps branded with chaos runes. They came for blood, and Wyrdstone roared orders. Formation! Shields forward! Niklas and Joran took position atop the rubble, crossbows clacking. Elsbeth knelt behind a fallen statue, her pistol drawn, chanting prayers through gritted teeth. Her skin was feverish, eyes rimmed with red, but her aim was true. Dorn, now barely human, skittered into the shadows, his third eye wide, blinking independently. Vhalrick stood at the center of it all, unmoving, waiting. The storm hit. Weird stone fell from the sky like meteors, striking stone and flesh alike. Where they landed, they hissed and bled. A shard the size of a dagger embedded itself in Karsk's thigh. He shrieked, ripped it free, and ate it. His muscles swelled, veins bulging black, and he charged with manic speed. Rorick met him. Steel clanged, sparks flew. Karsk screamed in tongues, slamming his hook into Rorick's shoulder. Blood sprayed. Rorick countered with a crushing blow to the jaw that shattered teeth and bone, but Karsk didn't fall. He laughed. Elsbeth fired. Once, twice. Both shots struck home. One blinded a sister. The other exploded a cultist's shoulder into wet pulp. Then the mutants reached them. Jurund was pulled from the rubble by a 4-armed horror that tore at his face with jagged nails. He screamed, his blood spraying across the ruins in a wide arc. His axe cleaved one arm free, then another, but they grew back, wrong, slime-covered and insectile. Niklas dropped bolt after bolt, but he was outnumbered. One of the sisters tackled him. Her mouth sewn shut, her eyes weeping acid, she beat his skull into the stone until it caved inward. Elspeth turned, saw him die. She screamed, and her scream wasn't hers. It came from deeper, something beneath her skin. Her hands moved without her. "The man on the walkie," she asked. "Who?" "I have never heard of a crime exit." Her pistol fired again, this time the barrel glowing green. The blast caught a cultist mid-run. He didn't just fall, he disintegrated, his flesh flaking into glowing ash. Elspeth stared at the pistol. It hissed in her hand. Then all sound vanished. A silence deeper than death, a pressure in the lungs. And then Vhalrick moved. He rose above the battlefield like a marionette pulled from the grave. His eyes blazed. His voice came not from his mouth but from everywhere. "Enough." The air buckled. The time bent. He raised one hand and the sky split. From above, a column of green fire erupted, slamming into the ground with the force of a cannon battery. Dozens died instantly. Flesh boiled, steel melted, stone screamed. The sister of Sigmar charged him, screeching, her eyes wide with religious fervor. Vhalrick turned his gaze upon her, and she froze, then exploded from the inside out. Her blood turned to worms, her bones cracked inwards. He drifted through the battle like a god. Each step brought death. Each whisper summoned madness. His presence bent the rules of reality. Men aged a century in seconds, then crumbled into dust. Others wept blood and fell to their knees, praying to him instead of their false gods. And just as quickly as it began, he stopped. The storm began to recede. The mutants scattered. The Blade Eaters lay dead. The Red Maw fled, dragging what little was left of their screaming leader. Vhalrick lowered his hand. His form dimmed. The fire faded from his eyes. He turned back to the Howlers. Only 5 remained. Rorick, bloodied and breathing raggedly. Elspeth, shaking, pistol held like a relic she no longer trusted. Durand, half his face gone, cradling a wyrdstone shard like a child. Dorn, who now moved like a spider more than a man. And Vhalrick himself, the ghost, the king, the weapon. He looked at them, calm, composed. "We should move. The path is open now." Rorick stared at him, blood dribbling from his lips. "What are you?" Vhalrick smiled, and this time it was a true smile, cold, sharp, devoid of lies. "I am what you will be." And he turned, and they followed. Behind them, Morslieb winked, its green eye slowly closing, but not in slumber, in satisfaction. Chapter 8. The Cathedral Below. The descent began beneath a ruptured ossuary, hidden behind a fractured fresco of Sigmar smiting daemons. Once, it might have been a place of worship. Now, it was a mouth in the stone, gaping, fetid and slick with centuries of rot. The mural had been defaced long ago, Sigmar's eyes were hollowed out, and wyrdstone shards had been driven into the wounds like blasphemous gemstones. Downward they went. The Howlers moved like phantoms, their boots muffled by ancient dust and corpse-laced mud. The stone stairs spiraled, warped by time and impact, slick with condensation and something far more viscous. The walls sweated. Not water. No. This moisture stank of metal and mildew and the thick sweetness of clotted blood. The only light came from the lantern held by Durand, its flame a sickly blue that seemed to cower in its own glow. Shadows danced, elongated, untrustworthy. More than once, Dorn tried to speak to one. They walked for hours, no time, just down until they reached the cathedral below. It was vast, beyond vast, a sunken dome of black stone and broken majesty, large enough to hold a small city beneath its ruptured roof. Ancient support columns rose like petrified titans, cracked and buckling. Moss grew in pulsing veins along the arches, and fungal blooms throbbed with a heartbeat of their own. Statues of Sigmar lined the walls, but twisted. Each bore two faces, one of righteous fury, the other of blind ecstasy. Some held hammers, others held tongues, severed and nailed to golden plaques. In the cathedral's center, where once an altar would have stood, now yawned a sunken pool. It was not water. The surface rippled, but it reflected nothing. Its texture was oily, its scent sharp and ancient. Shapes moved beneath it, too slow, too massive to be fish. Above it, suspended in chains that defied physics, hung a fractured bell the size of a house. It tolled once every few minutes. Not from movement, but from memory, each toll deep and low, resonating in bone rather than ear. The cathedral below, the end of the path. The shard lies beyond, Vhalrick said, his voice lower now, reverent, but only the marked may pass. Before anyone could speak, the ground shifted beneath them, not as quake or collapse, but as transformation. The floor moved, not physically, but perceptually. What had once been a hallway now led backward, walls stretched, folded, columns tilted in impossible angles. Rorick tried to move forward, but found himself walking in place, his steps sinking deeper into the stone like mud. "Word loops," Vhalrick murmured. "Old magic. This place remembers what it was, and hates what it has become." Elsbeth reached for her pistol and found a different weapon in its place. A curved blade, old and rusted, its hilt covered in writhing glyphs. She blinked, looked again. Her pistol was back. She said nothing. Vhalrick stepped forward, raising both hands. His ghostly form shuddered, fluctuating like oil on water. Then he began to chant. It was no tongue known to the rake. His voice echoed with syllables that turned stomachs and made blood vessels tighten. The runes on the cathedral's walls flared one by one in mirrored sequence. Then the floor cracked open. A series of tiles peeled away, revealing a narrow staircase leading beneath the pool, into the dark beneath the dark. "Trap," Rorick growled. Vhalrick did not answer. Instead, he reached out and placed a hand on the surface of the liquid void. It hissed, screamed. A dozen spectral hands reached up from beneath it, grasping his arm, pulling, begging, but they could not drag him down. His power burned them. The pool calmed. "Now it is safe." Rorick spat, but said nothing. They descended. The passage beneath the pool was slick and narrow, winding through what must once have been a reliquary. Skulls lined the walls, none intact. Some had metal driven through the eye sockets. Others had their lower jaws removed entirely. As they passed, some of them whispered, not words. Memories. A mother sobbing as she drowns her chaos-tainted son. A priest begging Sigmar for forgiveness as he strangles an entire congregation to preserve the faith. A child singing to his own severed tongue, nursing it like a doll. Elsbeth wept silently as she walked. Then they reached the final chamber. It was small, circular, an inverted sanctuary with a cruciform slab at its center. Upon it lay a sarcophagus of glass. Inside, a body. Not breathing, not alive, but not dead. A man. Skin stretched taut over muscle, eyes wide and full of black rot, nails grown into claws, hair matted with ash. Around the chamber, runes, forbidden, heretical, alive. They moved when looked at. "A first guardian," Vhalrick whispered. "He who bound the shard in flesh. A martyr of false loyalty." Elsbeth stepped closer. The sarcophagus pulsed with light. A wyrdstone shard jutted from the figure's chest, black, not green. It throbbed, and she heard her name. From inside it. She stepped back. Vhalrick raised his hammer. "Is this the cache?" "No," Vhalrick said. "This is only the door. The shard lies within. To reach it, you must walk through the memory of this man's pain. You must live his betrayal. Only then will the gate open." Wyrd stared. "And if we fail?" Vhalrick's face twisted in what might have been a smile. "Then you join him, as guardians, one shard, one soul, forever." And with that, he stepped back. His form flickered, dimming, retreating. He would not help them here. This was their trial. One by one, the Howlers looked at each other, then at the slab, and the screaming began. They had not even touched it. Not yet. Chapter 9. Flesh Unmade. It began with a twitch. Doran's left hand, slick with sweat and grime, started to spasm every time he drew breath. At first he thought it was nerves, the residue of the horrors they had witnessed in the cathedral below. But when the bones beneath his skin began to shift, clicking faintly with every pulse of blood, he said nothing. The others were changing too. Nicholas had died screaming during the Wyrdstone storm, his head crushed by a cultist's hammer, but Dorn was something else now. His third eye, once a small aberration hidden in his palm, had fully opened on his forehead. It blinked constantly, leaking a slow stream of black tears that hissed where they touched his skin. His voice was no longer human. It stuttered in reverse, like a scratched wax cylinder. He sang to himself in languages no one had taught him. Vhalrick bore the most subtle change, yet perhaps the most damning. His voice carried farther than it should have, echoing with a gravity that made men obey before they even realized they had heard him. His wounds healed too quickly, and when he bled, the blood steamed. He did not speak of it, and no one dared ask. Elsbeth felt the change before it showed. Each day since the mirror had opened, her thoughts had become more tangled, her prayers more difficult to remember. The catechisms of Sigmar twisted in her mouth. She could not finish them. When she closed her eyes, she dreamt not of salvation, but of unmaking. A beautiful dissolution of self. Her skin had turned slick with fever, but there were no blisters, only symbols, faint outlines beneath the surface, like bruises that shifted when pressed. They were the same runes etched into the chamber beneath the cathedral, the same sigils that moved. And worst of all, her weapon betrayed her. The silver-inlaid pistol she had named Judicator, blessed in fire, consecrated in the temple of Reikdor, had begun to whisper. Not loudly, but enough. "He's not lying, he's not lying." It was on the third day after the cathedral when she decided to kill him. They were camped beneath the broken remains of a fallen aqueduct, deep within the drowned quarter of Mordheim. Filth dripped from above in slow green droplets, and the only light came from the pulsating map, carved in wyrdstone and flayed vellum. Vhalrick sat apart, if sat was the right word. He hovered inches above the wet stone, his legs folded beneath him, his hands locked in a prayer mudra of impossible complexity. His eyes were closed, yet Elsbeth knew he was awake. Vhalrick had gone to scout the forward tunnels. Dorn was singing to the rats. Joran was curled around the shard taken from the guardian's tomb, cradling it like a lover. Elsbeth moved without a sound. She knelt behind Vhalrick, Judicator in her grip, a second blessed pistol hidden beneath her coat. She aimed at the back of his head, the place where bone met spirit. She whispered the 10 words of severance, the execution rite of the witch hunters. Her mouth burned on the 5th word. Her tongue bled on the 7th. She finished and fired. The shot cracked like a thunderclap, echoing through the tunnels. Her hand snapped back from the recoil, metal kissed with faith. The bullet struck and passed through him. No blood, no scream, no collapse. Just silence. Then his head turned. Vhalrick did not move it. It simply rotated, one eye now fully visible, bright as a dying star. His mouth did not open, but Elsbeth heard him all the same. Finally, now. She stepped back, fumbling for her second pistol. It slipped from her hand and landed in the muck with a sound like choking. "You lied," she hissed, heart-pounding. "You lied to all of us. I have only ever told the truth. Just not all of it. Do you feel it yet? The whisper in your marrow, the itch beneath your soul?" She raised her arms, fists clenched. "You're corrupting them. You're changing them." "No, I am merely removing the parts that do not matter." With a flick of his hand, she was airborne, the world inverted. Her stomach lurched. She crashed into a pillar, bones rattling, teeth cracking against her jaw. Pain exploded in her skull. She rolled over, groaning, and raised her eyes. He stood over her now, no longer ghostly, solid, regal, terrifying. His fingers extended, too long, wrapped in threads of living shadow. He placed one against her forehead. A searing cold flooded her mind. Visions tore through her. Cities burning beneath green skies, men eating their own children, Sigmar's statues vomiting blood. She saw herself, glorious, transformed, worshipped by the broken. She screamed, and then it stopped. He stepped back. "I could kill you," he said, "but then you wouldn't see what's coming." She panted, half sobbing. Why spare me?" "Because the shard has already chosen you." He turned, robes flowing around him like ink. "And I never defy the will of the stone." Behind her, the rats stopped singing. Jurand muttered something in a language without consonants. And from the pool of shadows where Dorn had disappeared hours before, something clicked. A joint that should not bend that way. A limb that should not stretch that far. Elsbeth sat in the filth, her face pale, her faith shattered. "So what?" Her hand trembled. Not from pain, not from fear, but from anticipation. Chapter 10. The Awakening. The last descent was silent. There were no more songs from Dorn, no whispered prayers from Elsbeth, no orders from Rorick. Even Jorand, whose lips had not stopped moving since the first warband ambush, had fallen quiet. The tunnel was slick and black, its walls riddled with veins of wyrdstone glowing faintly beneath the grime, like diseased arteries beneath rotting skin. Each step downward felt heavier, not just with dread, but pull, as if the earth itself were drawing them down, down into its infected heart. They emerged at last into a void unlike any chamber they had seen. The Wyrdstone cache. The vault of the shard. A cathedral turned inside out. The walls were composed of bone, tens of thousands of femurs and vertebrae, fused together with green glass and melted brass. The air shimmered with oppressive pressure, thick with dust that never fell. Gravity wept here. Water pooled on ceilings, shadows bled upward, and at the center, on a dais of warped obsidian, it stood. The shard, tall as a man, black as oblivion, faceted like a gemstone carved from unreality. It pulsed, but not with light, with memory, with intention. Veins of raw wyrdstone webbed out from it, threading into the walls, the floor, the very air. And it spoke, not aloud, not telepathically, but deeper, in the soul. It called. The Howlers approached like moths drawn to flame. Jurand was the first to touch it. He fell to his knees, hands trembling, and placed his fingers upon the shard. His mouth opened in ecstasy, then horror as his flesh began to slough, slowly at first like peeling paint, then faster, skin curling away in long ribbons, beneath it no blood, only raw green light, veins crystallized, eyes turning to glistening orbs of black glass. He moaned, in pleasure or agony it was impossible to say. Vhalrick tried to pull him back, but his gauntlet sank into Durrant's chest as if touching tar. When he tore his hand free, his fingers came away bare to the bone, his skin eaten clean. He screamed. The shard pulsed again, and Vhalrick stepped forward. He had been watching, smiling faintly, but now his smile cracked, split, broke. He lunged, arms outstretched, eyes wide with a hunger deeper than death. "Mine," he hissed, "mine again, mine forever." His ghostly form slammed into the shard, and the world shattered. A blast of green flame erupted from the dais, washing over the Howlers. Elsbeth was thrown backward, her coat igniting an impossible fire that burned cold. Dorn convulsed, arms snapping backwards, spine bending the wrong way, third eye dilated wide enough to crack his skull. "And Vhalrick," he screamed, not in pain, not in rage, but in rebirth. His farm boiled, grew. The illusion of humanity peeled away like wet paper. Muscle and bone twisted, lengthened. Wyrdstone shards burst from his chest, shoulders and spine like jagged wings. His face split vertically, two mouths now, each muttering different truths. His legs fused into a serpentine tail of fused vertebrae and sinew, wrapped in crawling runes that slid across his flesh. One arm was a tree of hands, the other a blade of bone longer than any man. His ribs opened and closed like gills, revealing glimpses of screaming souls trapped within. Where once floated a ghost of a nobleman, now loomed a god thing. A being of wyrdstone, an ancient fusion of man, magic, and madness. And it spoke. "I am Vhalrick no longer. I am the Wyrd Ascendant. I am the echo of the comet. I am the god of the forgotten oath." Elsbeth staggered to her feet, pistols in both hands. Her skin crawled with runes, her vision double. "You lied," she choked. "You used us." "No," the horror intoned. "You freed me." He raised one massive limb. Dorn vanished in an instant, erased, not killed. No sound, no scream, only a smear of static in the air, as if he'd never been. Urien tried to speak, but his jaw fell off mid-sentence. He collapsed, twitching, the crystal growing from his spine, piercing through his flesh like a tree birthing through stone. Vhalrick charged. He swung his hammer in one last act of defiance. It shattered against Vhalrick's ribcage with a sound like cracking reality. The Wyrd Ascendant leaned forward. One of the rib mouths opened, and it spoke into Vhalrick's face. "Unmake," Vhalrick exploded. Flesh, bone, thought, scattered into particles of light and dust. Elsbeth screamed, dropped to her knees, raised one pistol, fired. The bullet struck true. Vhalrick staggered. For the first time, he bled. Not blood, not ichor, but light. Green. Blinding. Endless. He turned to her, his many eyes narrowing. "You carry the shard in your soul. You are mine, Elsbeth." She aimed again. Her hands shook, but her finger wouldn't pull the trigger. Her body betrayed her, because somewhere deep inside, she agreed. The Wyrd Ascendant stepped down from the dais, and Mordheim trembled in his shadow. Chapter 11. The Noble's Revelation. The vault stank of birth, not of blood, not of pain, but of something older. a reek of divinity, still wet and squirming, sloughing off the afterbirth of prophecy. Where once the chamber had been vast and hollow, now it expanded with Vhalrick's breath. Walls buckled, the bones that composed them twisted inward as if seeking his presence. The wyrdstone veins throbbed in time with his voice, and Vhalrick, no longer a man, no longer a ghost, hovered just above the dais, his mutated form eclipsing the corrupted altar. His face, now split by a vertical seam, peeled open to reveal a third mouth between the halves, muttering secrets that warped the ears that heard them. Each limb moved with a grace both alien and sickening. Muscles writhed like serpents under crystalline skin, his ribcage still opened and closed like a terrible bloom, and inside it souls swam, fragments of the dead, their faces locked in silent screams. Elsbeth lay at the edge of the dais, her mouth dry, every nerve in her body vibrating with the taste of madness. She no longer remembered how many of the Howlers still lived. She didn't even remember how long it had been since Rorick had dissolved under the word unmake. But she did remember why they were here, and Vhalrick had begun to speak. His voice came not from his many mouths now, but from everywhere, through the walls, the stones, her blood. You think you came to Mordheim by chance. You think you were guided by hunger, greed, duty. You think I deceived you. He drifted closer. The space between them shrank without movement. Time buckled in his wake. But the lie was yours. With a flick of one clawed limb the air parted, a tear in the very weave of reality, and revealed scenes from the past. Elsbeth saw herself in Altdorf, poring over scrolls in the Sigmarite archives, the weird stone codices forbidden even to the high confessors. She had opened them. She saw Durand, long before the expedition, already hoarding minor shards, injecting himself with powdered fragments in secret. She saw Dorn, long mutated, crawling through sewer grates in Nuln, whispering to the dark long before Mordheim. They had not been chosen for their skill. They had been summoned. Vhalrick's voice was soft now, full of terrible pride. Each of you bore the seed, but you were the gate. Elsbeth clutched her pistol, tried to lift it. Her arm obeyed, barely. The weight of truth had made her body feel soaked in lead. He hovered over her, wings of wyrdstone unfurling from his back like jagged stars. These seals were placed by traitors, my own companions, those I fed, protected, empowered. They feared what I had seen. His eyes flashed, 8 of them, some human, others reptilian, one burning like a tiny sun. They bound my body in the vault beneath the cathedral. My soul they anchored to the mirror in the sanctum of fractures. And my power they fractured across time. He gestured, and images rose around them like smoke. A spiral of screaming faces, his former companions, locked in the mirror's fractal core. The cracked sarcophagus beneath the cathedral, leaking light and voices. The cache, pulsing, waiting, guarded by the soul-fused martyr who could no longer scream. I needed living hands. I needed blood. I needed desperation. He grinned now, all mouths stretching, teeth like broken glass. I needed you. Elsbeth forced herself to speak. You said you wanted to escape. He laughed. It shook the chamber. Escape? No. That was the lie I gifted you. The laughter died, and he leaned down. His breath froze the air. I do not flee this place. I become it. The dais beneath him cracked open, revealing a swirling pit of green fire, inside which ancient bones churned like driftwood. A city made of screaming spires rose from it, buildings with eyes, streets paved with tongues, bells that rang only when someone forgot their name. This city is the wound left by the comet, a scar in reality, but scars heal. I will make it a throne." He turned, arms outstretched, and the bones of the vault began to sing. "Mordheim shall become the eye of a new god, a beacon for the forgotten, the mutilated, the desperate. The world will remember what it cast out." His voice thundered now. "And I shall rule them as the Wyrd Ascendant, as the god of lies made flesh." Elsbeth screamed and fired. The shot hit. His head rocked back. One eye exploded into steaming ichor. He turned back to her. He grinned. "Good, you still resist. It makes your fall all the sweeter." With a gesture, he lifted her from the ground. Her limbs bent backward. Bones cracked. Blood ran from her eyes. Her pistol melted into her hand. But she did not scream. Even as she hung in the air, broken and burning, Elsbeth stared into his eyes. "You will fail," she rasped. "Even gods bleed." Vhalrick said nothing. He only smiled, and turned back to the pit. The city stirred beneath them, and above, Morslieb blinked. Chapter 12. The Fractured Warband. The vault, once only a cathedral beneath the earth, had become a sanctum of madness. The transformation had begun with Vhalrick's awakening, but now it spread outward like fire through dry parchment. Every surface writhed with change. The bone walls cracked open, revealing veins of raw wyrdstone that pulsed with wet green light. The air churned, thick with rot and ozone. In the ceiling, mouths opened like wounds, weeping black mist. In the floor, faces pushed up from beneath the stone, frozen in silent screams, some of them familiar. The Howlers were no longer a warband, they were a fracture. Those who remained did not all remain loyal. Elsbeth knelt beside a broken pillar, her shoulder shattered from her brief airborne torment, blood trickling from one ear. Her hands trembled as she tried to reload her final pistol with fingers that didn't quite obey. The whispers had grown louder. They no longer tempted, they promised. Rorick emerged from the smoke, his face pale, his right eye swollen shut, his armor scorched and half-melted, but he still stood, still breathed. He knelt beside her, placed a hand on her wrist. His voice rasped. "We can't win this, but we can end it." Elsbeth looked up at him. Her mouth was cracked open, her breath shallow. "How?" Rorick nodded toward the dais, toward the swirling pit of green fire where Vhalrick hovered, arms raised in prayer to no god but himself. "We bring it all down." She laughed, bitter, wet. "And die?" "Better dead than this." They turned, just in time to see Jurand step from the shadows. His eyes were gone, replaced by glowing shards. His chest had split down the center, revealing a weird stone-crusted cavity where his heart should be. He moved like a man walking through a dream, swaying gently, smiling like a child caught in a fever. "I see it now," he murmured. "I see the shape of it all. It's not madness. It's clarity. It's music." Rorick raised his hammer, but Jurand shook his head. "No more weapons. There's no war here, just evolution." He extended his hand. A tendril of word flesh unspooled from his palm, lashing toward them like a whip of meat and bone. Rorick ducked low, swung his hammer upward, and crushed Jurand's jaw with a thunderous crack. The mutant staggered back, shrieking with a dozen mouths that had burst open across his shoulders. His skull erupted into tiny bone wings fluttering. Then he collapsed, the green glow of the shard in his chest sputtering out. Elsbeth stared at the body. He wanted it. He wanted it. "Some people do," Rorick growled. Behind them, Dorn laughed. He stood atop the rubble of a shattered statue of Sigmar, arms spread wide. His skin had flaked away completely, revealing a lattice of wyrdstone and exposed nerves. His third eye, now the only one remaining, glowed like a star about to die. "I saw the path first," he said. "I led you all, and now I become the path." From his chest a mouth opened and sang, a single note, long and low. All across the vault the walls responded. The bones shifted. The pit flared. And Vhalrick turned. "You see now," he said. "They are becoming. They were always meant to become." He gestured, and Dorn's body unraveled, not torn, but translated. His limbs became glyphs, his spine a string of letters. He floated now, as a living word inscribed upon the air. Rorick grabbed Elsbeth's arm. "The supports, the columns. If we bring them down, collapse the roof, maybe, just maybe." Elsbeth nodded. "We'll bury him." They ran, dodging tendrils of living glass, ducking beneath falling debris. The vault began to scream, its foundation cracking with every word Vhalrick spoke. "In you." He saw. "You think stone can stop me?" he thundered. "I was born in the comet's fire. I am the will of the forgotten gods. I am the new truth." Rorick reached the first support pillar, massive, bone-bound, embedded with the fossilized arms of 100 martyrs. He slammed his hammer against it once, twice, 3 times. It cracked, roared, began to fall. Elsbeth crawled toward the second. She threw her last vial of sanctified oil across the base, struck it with the butt of her pistol, and the column ignited, flames pouring upward in a scream of vengeance. The vault groaned. The pit trembled. Vhalrick rose higher, his body losing cohesion, stretching into shapes too vast for mortal minds to contain. Tentacles of logic and language, wings of reversed time, teeth made of memories. You cannot kill what was never truly born. Rorick roared, his body catching fire as a wave of wyrdstone heat slammed into him. He drove his hammer into the last support, and it exploded in a bloom of holy light and black ash. Above them, the ceiling collapsed. Stone, bone, steel, recalled continuous effort. It all came down. Elsbeth turned one last time and fired her pistol into Vhalrick's form. The bullet hit, not his heart, but the shard inside him. And for a moment, just one, his form flickered. He screamed. Then the vault crushed them all. White. Darkness. Silence. Chapter 13. Sacrifice and Fire. There was no light anymore. The collapse should have ended everything. The cathedral below had caved in upon itself with a scream of stone and ancient metal, the sky of bone crashing down to smother the throne of madness. Yet nothing ended. Because Vhalrick did not die. He changed. Where once had been structure, now floated madness. The world fractured, peeled apart like flesh stripped from a skull. The concept of space, of ground and sky, disintegrated. The bones of the cathedral hung suspended like ribs in a vast womb, floating in a churning void of green lightning and screaming wind. Columns twisted in impossible angles, fire rose downward, statues melted into blood. And at the center, still rising, still growing, was Vhalrick. What had once been man and ghost was now a god form, coiled in black wyrdstone, haloed by burning glyphs that rewrote themselves with every blink. He no longer walked or spoke, he existed, and the world obeyed. The shard pulsed within him, embedded in the cage of his ribs, now split wide open like the petals of some nightmarish flower. The souls trapped within screamed as one. Above and around him, reality bent. The laws of time, gravity, perception, all his to twist. The remnants of the Howlers, just a few now, barely clinging to the memory of their own names, fought blindly. Rorick had become a titan of blood and iron, armor fused to flesh, hammer glowing with defiance. Every step he took shattered the ground, but the ground reshaped itself. Each blow he landed against Vhalrick's infinite body struck nothing, or struck himself, his own screams echoing back at him from other versions of his past. Dorn, whatever remained of Dorn, floated near the edges of this new world. A string of syllables formed into humanoid shape. He wept backwards. And Elsbeth was dying. Her bones had broken in the collapse. Her blood soaked the sacred scrolls that once wrapped her chest. Her left eye had melted from wyrdstone exposure. But she still breathed, still remembered. In her belt pouch, still intact despite everything, were the 7 relics of severance. Holy items recovered from a burned inquisitor's chapel. A nail from the true gallows, a shard of the silver flame, a child's tooth still marked with the symbol of purity, the cracked lens of the 1,000-faced mirror, a blood-soaked coin from a martyr's hand, a sliver of the Dawngate's crossbeam, and a torn strip of St. Luthien's shroud. She had never intended to use them. To use all 7 was to die, not in flame, not in glory, but in removal, a sacrifice not just of life, but of self. She crawled forward across the broken altar stones, the jagged path tearing open her skin. Rorick roared somewhere above, smashed into a spire of bone. A scream, his, hers, shattered glass that was not there. Elsbeth gripped the relics with blood-slicked fingers. Her pistol was gone, her voice barely a whisper. And still she prayed. Not to Sigmar. He had long stopped listening. She prayed to the memory of truth. The relics began to burn in her hands. One by one they ignited, not with flame, but with the annihilation of concept. They erased presence, consuming their own histories. The air trembled. Vhalrick turned. His many heads tilted. His laughter stopped. He saw her. He felt her. A challenge, a threat, a final no in a world rewritten by yes. He surged toward her, the air behind him forming a choral scream of restructured reality. Tendrils of living prophecy reached for her throat. Time reversed. She saw her birth, her first kill, her first betrayal, her first choice. And she chose now. Elsbeth lifted the last relic, the strip of St. Luthien's shroud, now burning with a fire that wasn't light, but refusal. She spoke the word of severance. Her voice cracked, her eyes bled, her body turned to ash, and the relics exploded. In divine denial, Vhalrick screamed. Not just in pain, in disbelief. For a moment, just one, the god was undone. His form broke apart. His head shrieked in different languages. His wings curled inward. The shard pulsed wildly, losing its stability. Souls inside howled in freedom. The weird stone lines that held the floating cathedral snapped. The whole world began to fall. Rorick, impaled but conscious, saw the explosion of white. He saw Elsbeth vanish, saw the god falter, and for the first time he believed. Elsbeth was gone. Not dead, not ascended, gone, erased by sacrifice and fire. And the wound she left in Vhalrick bled. Chapter 14. The Collapse. The vault was unraveling. Not crumbling, not yet, but dying. Reality flickered like a candle caught in the wind. Gravity pulsed in waves. Time blinked, forward, backward, sideways. The sky above the shattered cathedral now resembled a rotting wound, torn into the heavens, bleeding green starlight down upon what remained of the world below. And at the center of it all, Vhalrick screamed. He hung in the air like a marionette whose strings were being severed one by one. The power that once defined his every gesture had begun to warp into contradiction. His arms moved, then undid themselves. His mouth spoke in chorus, but the words contradicted themselves and turned to vapor. Where his wings had once spread across the vault, there was now only a silhouette, cracked, unformed, falling inward. Elsbeth's sacrifice had worked, but it had not ended him. Rhorik rose slowly from the wreckage of the dais, blood sluicing down his face in thick, viscous ropes. His armor had fused with his skin. Blackened plate sunk deep into raw muscle, and green wyrd light pulsed from beneath the seams. He no longer looked like a man, but he still moved like one. A ruined warhammer clutched in one hand, the other cradled tightly to his chest, where a pouch of wyrdstone charges waited. There had never been a full plan, just desperation, and desperation had its tools. He limped across the fractured altar as the vault began to breathe around him, its walls expanding and contracting like lungs ready to rupture. Bones snapped in the distance. From below, the green pit at the cathedral's heart began to bubble. Above him, the form of Vhalrick twisted again, screeching, less in rage now, more in defiance. His third eye flickered open and closed at random. His limbs cracked into new configurations with every spasm. A god dying badly. "You will not bury me," he shrieked, voice now echoing from a dozen mouths, all carved into the air. "You will not bind me again. This city is mine, this soul, this flesh, this name." Rhorik spat blood and growled, "No!" He reached the column base where the vault's foundation met the wyrdstone heart. There, buried under bones and broken chains, was the charge casing. A holy bomb made of real, raw wyrdstone, encased in consecrated iron. Forbidden, unstable, beautiful. He knelt. The world above twisted again. Wings of glass slammed down toward him, blades of sound and memory. One nearly sliced his leg off. Another took his ear. He didn't flinch. He ripped open the casing and shoved his bloodied hand into the activation chamber. The shards within bit him, cut through tendon, split nails from fingers. His flesh blackened, muscles spasmed, and the charge began to glow. 3 minutes. He turned and ran. The world howled. From behind him, Vhalrick lunged, not physically but through the vault as though every surface was his body now. Walls opened into mouths, floors cracked into claws. Stained glass windows screamed blasphemies and spat burning crows. The collapse had already begun. Dorn's voice echoed from the void, long since formless. No escape, no escape. All roads lead to the stone. But Rhorik kept running. He passed the bones of Durand, now part of the architecture, his twisted ribcage wrapped around a support column like a crown of thorns. He passed shattered archways where light bent sideways. And then light. Not wyrdstone light. Not madness. Sunlight. Real, true, pure light breaking through, a crack in the surface somewhere above. He found 2 survivors, if they could be called that. Flatulent, his face burned down to bone, dragging his own intestines like rosary beads. A silent Reiklander, lips sewn shut, his eyes black and glowing. They looked at him and followed, because there was nothing else. The ceiling began to collapse behind them, not in pieces, but in realms, entire sections of space folding inward like pages torn from a heretic's tome. The vault screamed as it died. Vhalrick shrieked from the center, "I am the shard, I am the word, you cannot silence truth." But the bomb spoke louder. It detonated in a bloom of anti-light. No fire, no shrapnel, just void, pure and perfect, sucking in power, sound, soul. The heart of the vault crumpled into itself. Vhalrick's body folded into negative space, his final scream echoing across 10,000 dimensions of pain. Stone collapsed. Wyrdstone shattered. The city groaned, and the cathedral fell. Rorick pulled himself from the rubble, coughing black dust from his lungs. His right arm was gone. His back had split in 3 places. The survivors, if they still lived, lay half-buried, twitching. Above him, Mordheim smoldered. Below, silence. He felt it. Vhalrick was sealed. Not destroyed. Not dead. But bound again. Waiting. Rorick stood, his shadow long in the dawnlight. The wyrdstone in his blood still pulsed. The curse was not gone. It never would be. But Mordheim would not rise today, and that was enough. Chapter 15. The Whispering Stone. He never left Mordheim. Not fully. The survivors had dragged themselves from the wreckage beneath the ruined sky, crawling through the bleeding earth and fractured time until the storm passed. The Reiklander with the sewn lips died first. He choked on his own dreams. The flagellant went mad in a moment of clarity and tore out his own heart in the shape of a hammer. But Rorick remained. He wandered the outskirts of the ruined city, the deadlands where even the crows no longer circled. His armor was fused to his flesh now, scorched into him like a second, tighter skin. The wyrdstone that had once been scattered in his blood now nested in his bone. He could feel it growing there, like a tumor made of memory and light. His right side was gone, blasted clean in the vault's collapse. What replaced it was not of flesh nor machine. It was something in between, a jagged crust of crystal and charred sinew, pulsing with slow green fire. He covered it with rags soaked in holy oil, but the oil hissed and turned black. He had not spoken in days. Not because he couldn't, but because he didn't know if the voice would be his. On the 13th day he built a shrine. A crude one, stones, skulls, bits of melted iron. At its center he placed a fragment, the only piece he had kept. The wyrdstone shard, no bigger than a coin, black, not green, veined with light, warm to the touch. He had found it embedded in the ruin of his armor, nestled between his ribs like an infant in a womb. He should have discarded it, should have buried it in salt and ash, and drowned himself in the river. But instead he kept it, wrapped in cloth, hidden in a pouch, pressed to his chest when he slept. Sometimes, in the deep of night, it glowed faintly, just enough to cast shadows on the walls, shadows that didn't match him. Sometimes it hummed. Sometimes it whispered. He sat now before the shrine, one leg torn at the knee, a splinter of bone jutting from the wound like a fang. Flies buzzed but did not land. His blood, thick and strange, refused to clot or flow. It pulsed in time with the shard. His eyes, once proud and hard with command, now twitched with sleeplessness. His beard was matted with dried blood and wyrdstone ash. His voice, when he spoke, was a gravel-choked thing. He whispered to the shard. He stopped him. The wind replied. Dry, indifferent. He touched the shard. I sealed the vault. The shard pulsed once, faintly. It was like a heartbeat. Rorick's breath caught. He stared. Waited. Silence. You freed me. He recoiled, stumbled, clutched his head. No, no, no. You sealed the vault, but not the wound. The voice was gentle, ancient, familiar. The wound is you, Rorick. He screamed, tore at his chest, trying to rip the shard away, but his skin had grown around it, fused, The flesh refused to break. I live now in your blood, in your spine, in your dreams. He fell to his knees, mouth foaming, vision splintering into jagged, laughing shards. The city will rise again. The shard remembers. And so do you. The shrine caught fire, green and bright and wet. It crackled like bone in boiling water. Rhorik wept, but no tears came. His ducts were full of crystal. Laughter. Vhalrick's laughter. It echoed in the wind, in the trees, in the bones. It echoed in him, and the shard whispered just once more, softly, sweetly. Sin. The last of Rhorik's sanity broke like old steel. He began to laugh too, and Mordheim listened,